You are listening to episode 31 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, you'll learn how Emily got her period and her freedom back by creating more space in her life. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Hey there, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld, your host as always, and today we have a really awesome interview with one of my clients who went through my Get Your Period Back coaching program. And this person also happens to have an awesome blog and podcast. And so I know you're really going to enjoy getting to hear her story and getting to hear her feedback about how her life has changed after making the changes that were necessary to be successful in her period recovery. So today I have with me my client, Emily Morello. She has a blog and podcast dedicated to sharing life lessons and stories, recipes, career and college advice, motivation, health and wellness hacks, and so much more. And she has a lot of really great wisdom to share about her own experience going through the journey of hormone recovery, period recovery, and really learning how to live in a way that allows her to not only take care of her body, but also take care of her mind and her spirit. So I'm so excited for you all to get the chance to meet her and to hear her story. And without further ado, here is Emily Morello. All right, everybody, I am so excited to have with me here today one of my long-term clients and someone who has been such an advocate for hypothalamic amenorrhea recovery in general, as well as the program that she worked through to get her period back. So welcome to the show, Emily Morello.
Thank you so much, Laura, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't often get to interview clients that also have their own podcast. So this is a little bit of a treat since I know that when you're a podcaster, there's a lot of learning curve that you have to go through to run a podcast. And then by the time you're being interviewed by people, it's usually even better interviews because you know how to talk on a podcast.
Yeah, it's cool being on this end, though.
Yeah.
I haven't been interviewed in a while.
Yeah, I actually really like being interviewed because for whatever reason, it's easier. I think I'm still learning solo episodes because I didn't do them with my old podcast. And with this one, I've been doing them and it's like a whole new skill to be able to do them alone. So I really like interviewing and I like being interviewed. So all of that said, I would love to give the audience a chance to get to know you. So I know this is like a very broad question to ask, who are you? But I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the place where you became a client of mine.
Well, I am 24 years old and I'm originally from Warren, Ohio, which is in Northeast Ohio. Some people say I have an accent, which I don't really hear, but if I do, it's a mixture between Pittsburgh and Cleveland accent. So it's kind of like Warren, Ohio has our own way of speaking, I guess. But I went to school at Ohio University and I studied mechanical engineering there. It's in Athens, Ohio. And after that, I started a job with Parker Hannifin. They're a big engineering company in Cleveland, Ohio. and I was placed in the division Sporlan, which is HVAC and refrigeration valves. We manufacture those, and I am a sales engineer for them. So basically, I didn't even pick my industry when I interviewed for Parker Hannifin. I just interviewed for 6 of their operating groups and they placed me in it. But it was kind of cool because when I was going through mechanical engineering, I liked thermodynamics the most. I basically, because it's a cycle and my mind works very well with cycles. So it was just interesting that I was in this industry. I would have never thought I'd be in this industry. But anyway, this company is really awesome. They had a lot of opportunities, and I got to live in 5 different states for this job. And I've only been here for a little over a year and a half. It'll be 2 years in June.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been crazy. But I basically, Sporlan's headquarters is in Washington, Missouri, and I was there for 6 months. Then I got placed in my territory, Atlanta, Georgia. But before moving to Atlanta, I lived in Tampa, Florida for 6 months. And then I moved to Atlanta, and now I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where I wanted to end up in the end. So it really worked out, and I absolutely love it. So that's kind of what I do. But with that being said, I realized when I was going through mechanical engineering that I felt like I wanted to do something else. I really have always liked health and nutrition. And at first, it kind of started just because of sports. I was always playing sports when I was younger, specifically running. I loved running, and I water skied growing up and snow skied and played tennis. But with running, I kept getting injuries. It was basically from my heels and like growth plates in my heels, and then my hamstrings and my hip flexors. They're all really tight, so they would pull my legs out a little more, and I'd get injuries on my hamstring or IT band. And it seemed like anything I did, I would get injured. So because of that, I went to physical therapy. I got introduced to yoga, and that's kind of how my interest in the body and a little bit into the health side started. So I then went to college, and when I was studying mechanical engineering, I always seeked to do projects related to the health industry, whether that be designing prosthetic ski limbs or ski leg, or to actually at one point I had my senior design project was designing a device to treat cervical cancer. So they had very different spectrums. And I actually at one point, I didn't even want to graduate at all. I wanted to stay and take courses for prerequisites if I decided I wanted to go to med school. And it was kind of like a life crisis I had, like, of course, when I already had a job offer and to finish senior year. I was like, Mom, I think I'm going to stick around and go to med school. She's like, are you kidding me? But because of that, I started my job. I decided to stick my route and get my job with Parker Hannifin and my sales engineer. But as I was at my training in Washington, Missouri, if you're not familiar, Washington, Missouri is a little town it's like an hour west of St. Louis. There's not really much around it at all. And I needed something to do other than go to work and work out. And that's when I started a blog, and later it transitioned into me also starting a podcast when I was in Tampa. But that's kind of how I fell into the health and wellness space. And the more I'm in it, the more I love it. But as I said, and you kind of want to know how I got into your program, of course, I was interested in health and wellness since high school, but at first it was all with good interest, I guess. And then it spiraled into orthorexic tendencies, of course, and disordered eating, disordered mindset around exercise before college. And that's kind of how everything snowballed. Basically, I was always small growing up, really small, hence some of the injuries too, just from not having enough muscle in certain places. And then senior year of high school, before I entered college, I gained like 10 pounds. And it was from not being in sports anymore. And also I worked at a coffee shop. So I would just, if I made like a smoothie or something for someone, I would always eat the leftovers. And also hormonally, I'm going through changes. I was 18 years old, and I just got put on birth control because my periods were really long and I had really bad cramps. So this all happened when I was 18, and I think it was like January of 18 when I got on birth control. And that's when I noticed the weight gain, and I kind of freaked out because I was like, oh, well, when I go to college, I'm going to gain, gains weight. So I don't want to go to college have already gained weight and then gain 15 extra pounds, gain the freshman 15, and then be just someone I didn't want to, I was kind of scared of that thought. So that's when I went on my first diet, and I actually read a book called Thinner, Leaner, Stronger. And this book, it talked about counting macros and weightlifting, which I already did a little bit of weightlifting in like middle school and high school, but it was more for like to aid in sports and to help prevent injuries. But this was totally different. This was like the bodybuilding almost type thing. And I started counting calories, and I was really adamant about sticking to it. I tried it for like a couple months. I was like, oh, this isn't for me. And then I remember that June, I went to my orientation for college, and I was like, okay, I need to look better and be more fit before I go to college so I can meet more friends. And then I stuck to it. And I remember I was like, I only weighed like 115. So I was like already really small, having all this bad mindset. Like I was actually getting to a normal weight, and I thought I was overweight, which it was just not good. And then I remember that was in like June. And then by November, I was literally 97 pounds. So I lost a lot of weight, and that's when I realized it was bad. But my period also disappeared in that time. And since I was new on birth control, I would call my gynecologist, of course, and tell them like, this is what's happening. I'm not sure what's going on. I did lose some weight, and I didn't really tell them how much. I was like, I did lose some weight, but I'm not sure why my period's gone. And they're like, oh, it's just your birth control. It's the type you're on. That happens a lot to people. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Good. And my mom, she brought up like how much weight I lost and was like, all right, well, if you don't gain some weight, then you're not going back to college. So I like stepped back a little bit and wasn't as controlling. I gave myself a little bit of flexibility for like the rest of the semester. But overall, I really was controlling my exercise, my weight. I would only let myself gain so much to a certain threshold. And that kind of continued for the next few years until I remember senior year. I was kind of just sick of overall this back and forth with gaining some weight, losing some weight. And it was all relative to a few pounds, and just being so obsessed with what I was eating and how much exercising I was doing. And I thought I missed having my period. I didn't even know what it felt to feel like a woman because I didn't have my period for so long. So I got off birth control my senior year of college, and that was in September. Called my gynecologist. I was like, what do you need to know for me to do this the right way for my body to be ready to get off birth control? And they're like, oh, you can just finish your pack and get off, and then you should start your period in 3 months. If not, call us. I'm like, all right, great. And part of me knew I still wasn't going to start my period. That whole time I knew, but I was just like, oh, if you just are optimistic, you'll start. But deep down, it was like
positive thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. So of course I didn't start my period. And during that time, I started going to my best friend, Google, trying to figure out why I wasn't starting my period. I came across YouTubers who didn't have their period and recovered from going paleo or keto. So I went even more into like a worse spiral. Before, it was all about counting calories and like the bodybuilding type thing, even though I was never a bodybuilder, but just their methodology. And then it transitioned to orthorexia behind like, oh, what's the nutritional value of this? How is this going to fuel me? I actually still counted calories at times, but it was more about paleo and keto. And then I did this until it took a while. It took a really long time. And I had a really tough senior year. I lost a friend, and it kind of gave me a different perspective of life. And finally, when I graduated senior year, I'm like, all right, Emily, I'm just sick of everything you've been putting yourself through. And even after me saying that, though, it took until the following January. So after I was already graduated college to actually put in the work. And when I graduated and I was in Missouri, I started looking at podcasts and YouTube videos, and I came across an interview with you, and I don't remember who the other person was. It was just so random by chance. I typed in hypothalamic amenorrhea because I knew I had that even though I was never diagnosed. And you were speaking and I was like, oh my God, this sounds great. And then it wasn't until I moved out of Missouri and I was in Tampa that January of 2019, I contacted you and then I started your program.
That was quite the story. And I feel like it was even some stuff that I hadn't heard about. So, because I know you and I chatted before you enrolled, and then obviously we've been in communication as part of the program. So I don't know if I knew that you had done the more like macro counting bodybuilding stuff. And I've seen that book before. It kind of makes me laugh that well, it's not really funny. It's actually kind of sad. The women's version is thinner, leaner, stronger, and the men's version is bigger, leaner, stronger. And I'm like, I mean, it's probably very similar content, but it's like, I just don't love that it's always focused on just being thinner for women.
Oh, yeah. And I followed that like to a T my whole entire freshman year. And then I got sick of that and I went to like different types of workout guides. But that was what really drove my disordered mindset.
And I know that when we first chatted about you joining the program, I think there was some fear around joining, if you don't mind me sharing that.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Because I know that, I mean, it's very common. It's honestly very, very typical that people that I talk to about joining the program are experiencing some level of fear around enrolling. So I would be curious to hear from you. What do you think was some of the fear that was coming up when you were deciding whether or not to invest in group coaching?
Well, first off, I knew I needed some help because I was trying kind of like half-assing it for a couple of years to get my period back and then not because, well, in Missouri, I like found my community in CrossFit, which was like when I told myself I was ready to get my period back, I started CrossFit, which the people I met were amazing and I loved being with them, but that was like how I was finding my friends. And obviously if I'm like telling myself I'm ready to get my period back and I'm doing CrossFit, it's like I needed some help and some grounding. So it was really just the financials at first because I started paying off my student loans that I think it was because you get a grace period after you graduate. So I started paying my student loans off that November. And I was like, all right, I'm really gonna, put all this money towards it because luckily when I was in Tampa, I didn't have to pay that much for rent. I had a stipend since I was on a rotation for work. So I was putting all this money to student loans. And I was like, I don't know if I should pay this because I could use that for loans. And I remember I was like, all right, we had our conversation. I was so convinced that you were the person that I needed to work with. But then as soon as you said how much it costs, I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. And then I thought about it for like a couple seconds on the phone. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And then after I committed, I had anxiety about it. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. There's no way. But then I spoke with you and you're like, well, you're not really supposed to be exercising now because not only was I going through this with my period, I injured my shoulder. Like I was going through physical injuries too. So it's like, is there another way? Because you seemed so interested on the phone and is there another way you can afford this as well? And I was like, I thought about it. I'm like, yes, there is. There is a way. Mm-hmm. I can not pay for my gym membership and class pass and all this other stuff I was doing. And it seemed like, especially that year before, I just wasted money on little programs. So like a couple little programs here and there, which would then add up to something large. Mm-hmm. And this is an investment in your health. So it was something that I was willing to do, but it really took me trying to tone back my anxiety to realize that I was worth the commitment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just remember being on the other side of that. And it's always whenever you're the one offering a program to someone and then they're kind of like, I don't know, should I do it? Should I not? There's this, and it's a skill set that I've had to really learn how to improve because I go after what I want and like money's never something that's standing in the way. I mean, obviously I don't just go like spend money on whatever. I have the same car I've had for like 6 years now. And like, I'm not just out there just, spending money for no reason, but if there's something that I want, if there's coaching or a program or something that I know is really going to be valuable to me and to the way that I'm showing up in the world, it's like, usually money is not the thing that's going to stop me. So sometimes I have a hard time understanding when someone's like, I really want this. I really want this. And then they're like, oh, but I don't want to spend money on it. And to be fair, the program is not cheap, right? It's not like, a
Yeah.
$70 ebook or something, or, a lot of these health programs online are, you know, not that expensive, and you can buy a lot of them and kind of like collect programs. And my desire with the Get Your Period Back coaching program is to create an experience where only the committed people are joining, and that they are getting enough access to me that they get the results, but then also that they are learning the skills for themselves so that they can actually be successful in the long term. Because yes, I do private coaching, and yes, I can give somebody recommendations and come up with a plan, but I actually really think it's valuable to be able to learn those skills yourself, and to be able to not only take it seriously, because, if you had spent $50, $100 in the program, maybe you wouldn't have watched all the videos. Maybe you wouldn't have finished it. But by investing at a higher level, first of all, it kind of made you, well, I'm guessing, this is usually how these things go. It probably made you really take it seriously, and it made you get off the fence as far as like, should I do this? Should I not? Like, should I go all in? Should I keep doing what I'm doing? And so that decision to invest at that level, when you did have other expenses that were important as well, I think was something that probably actually helped you be more successful than if you were to just spend a little bit of money and kind of not feel like it was a big commitment that you were making.
Yeah. And that was really the first time, out of college, that I spent so much money on one thing. Because before coming to you, I was seeing a naturopath in Missouri, and he was helping, because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I had PCOS and I had no clue. And so I was seeing a naturopath, and I was spending money on myself, but it was in small increments. And overall, it was a huge investment on that too, but it was spread over months, and it wasn't giving me, sure, it helped some gut issues I had, but it wasn't getting me the result I wanted, which was my period back. And after speaking with you, I knew that this was what I needed, and it was going to give me the result. So it was like, all right, let's just do it. Let's actually commit yourself to this process, and let's heal my body.
Well, I'm very glad that you stuck with it. And I remember talking to you about how, I understand you're scared, and I understand this is a big deal, but I also think this is going to be really, really good for you. And now, a year later, I think we can say for sure that it was a good, even if it was scary, a good investment, good decision for you.
Yes, so definitely.
What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned while doing the work through the program?
So one of the biggest ones was that I could still enjoy life. That does not include exercise. One thing that you share in the program is that you don't have to quit exercise completely to get your period back. Well, for me, I did, because I was having physical issues too. My shoulder had been messed up since high school from, I don't know what sport it was, but it was something. And it would get triggered here and there as I went through college, but nothing too bad. But I went paddleboarding, and I had really bad form, I guess. I remember I woke up the next day and I could barely move my arm, and I could literally barely lift it. And it was horrible. And I'm a sales engineer. I have to hold big equipment sometimes. So it was I couldn't even do my job. And I was trying to go to yoga still, and I was trying to work out still that next week, and I knew I shouldn't. So I remember I was going to work out, and I'm like, what am I doing? And then I had your call with you, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then I went to go see a physical therapist. And in my head, during that time, or when I had the call with you and I started your program, because I of course, binge listened to the episodes because I really wanted to dive into it. But I went to see my physical therapist, and she was like, all right, you need to take a break from exercise. I'm like, okay, well, I'm hearing this now. You were saying it's, you probably should, you need to back off, but you might not need to cut it out completely. And she's telling me, all right, you need to cut it out completely. And then I was like, okay, obviously this is just a sign I need to stop exercising for now. So I really had to stop exercising for a month. And it was kind of crazy because I lived in this city in Tampa, Florida. I didn't know anyone. I don't have an office for work. I work from home or I travel. And some of my neighbors, they were into fitness. And it was like, I love them though. And I'm still good friends with them. But it was like I had to be friends with out connecting on that fitness level. And I had to learn how to actually get used to being with myself for the first time ever. In Missouri, I had a roommate and now I was all by myself. So I learned during that time that the things I love, like I've always loved reading, but I started reading more. I really started getting into my blog. I've always loved writing. So I would start writing and sharing my story. And I really, really loved it. And little things like that, like walking outside in the sunshine. And I was super happy. And I realized I did not need exercise to be happy. And then I also, as I dove into that, I realized that my exercise addiction and disordered eating, it was a coping mechanism to get over things that I was struggling with. And I actually ended up going to see a therapist when I lived in Tampa. I started going to see her because I lost my friend senior year and I was going to see her for that reason. But then it ended up spiraling into me talking about why I feel like I need to exercise all the time. And it wasn't like I wanted to change my body. I just loved it. But she was like, well, are there other ways you can, just not move that much? And I realized that was my coping mechanism to just kind of, I knew I shouldn't do it, but all the time, but I did. And it was a lot of me trying to discover new ways to cope with stress and slow down. And also during this time, I realized the importance of having a community to share what I'm going through and to be honest and open about things and not having to seem like I'm strong every second was so important in valuing friendship, actually spending time with people other than just exercising and going to the beach and doing little things like that that made me happy. But I think the biggest lesson too, which I'm still working on, is that the whole process takes time and that you really, really need to gain some patience and really just respect the journey. And you should still hope for the outcome, of course, but not just obsess over the outcome and be really present in the journey and what's happening, all the little changes, and just know that it's going to take time and a lot of work.
And I think it's great what you were mentioning before about the exercise piece, because one of the things that I think scares people away from doing amenorrhea recovery is the thought that they just have to sit on the couch all day and that's it. That's all they're allowed to do. And as you said, like the program doesn't say you have to quit exercise to get your period back and you can't do anything. But I can't remember if I've mentioned this in the videos or just in the group in general. Sometimes it does help to take some time off just as like a mental break. And for you having those injuries, I mean, obviously, even if you had your period, you would have had to take time off of exercise to heal from that. But I think it's really good to learn how to take time off from exercise and not have that affect your mental health. I know for me personally, just recently, I had been traveling a lot for work and I had a big event that I ran over the weekend and I got sick traveling, which like all of this like coronavirus stuff happening. I'm like, great. Now what do I have? So I actually haven't been in the gym in, it'll be 2 weeks really by the time I get back into it on Friday. And even when I go on Friday, I'm probably not going to work out as hard as I normally would because I'm still, getting over just a lot of stuff happening. And even though I've been having a great month as far as enjoyment is concerned, traveling, sleeping in hotels, running events, like being sick, all of that is a big stressor. So for me, I used to work out like, I'm trying to think, when I was in college, a lot of times it had more to do with just being bored because I didn't have a super tough workload. Especially senior year, I actually dropped down to part-time status because I had credits from high school. I had AP classes. So I just like didn't have to be full-time. And I was like, basically convinced my parents to pay for my car instead of paying for the final semester of school. So, cause I was like, well, I only need like one credit and so I, especially senior year, was just in the gym all the time. And I was an athlete growing up as well. And initially, a lot of the training I did was just to to support my sport. But then once I got out of collegiate sports and really just was like on my own, it did turn into this body like manipulation type of thing. And I was in the gym for like 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week or something. And I don't think I ever caused serious harm and I never got injured or anything, but just the fact that I felt like I needed to be in the gym for 2 hours is kind of ridiculous, especially multiple days a week. So I think for me, a lot of what I've learned about exercise in the last couple of years, especially working with a private coach and just, being busy and having to make some tough decisions about how I spend my time, it's really nice to realize that one, I don't have to train every day. And I certainly don't even have to train every other day. I can really train like 2 to 3 times a week and maintain, if not even continue to grow my fitness level. But then also just recently with having to take some time off, it doesn't even faze me. Like I'm just kind of like, okay, I guess I'm not working out this week. And it's not even something that I'm like worried about or thinking, when am I going to work out again? Or how long has it been since I was at the gym? So it's funny that you mentioned taking a month off. When I got married, there was a bunch of stuff that I just didn't feel like going to the gym because I was newly married and my husband moved in with me and stuff. So it was like, and we were on our honeymoon and just all the things that were happening pre and post wedding. I ended up not exercising formally. Like I didn't go to the gym for like 6 weeks and I didn't even really notice. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I haven't worked out in 6 weeks. Okay. I guess that's, maybe I should get back into it so I can get back onto a routine, but it wasn't something that stressed me out or worried me at all. So it is interesting when I see clients that think about taking a couple weeks off of exercise and in their minds, it's this huge deal. Whereas I feel like I'm at a place now, and I don't know if you're there too, where it's like taking a couple weeks off is just kind of like, oh, okay, it's fine. It's not a big deal.
I remember when I was in college, because in that book, it said every 8 weeks, you should take a week off, like 8 to 12 weeks or whatever. And I remember when I would take those weeks off, it was like I still had to kind of exercise. I couldn't actually give myself that break, which is crazy now thinking about, but it was true. And I embraced that first month off. I really did embrace it. And I got into stretching and I got more into yoga again. But it was because I was just stretching. So I was like, okay, I forgot how much I love this. I couldn't afford it really in college and I forgot how much I love it again. And it was nice to kind of just check in and remember what I'm passionate about. But I did notice that, and I still do notice, when I go through those processes and when everything's going great, it's so easy for me to just continue down that pattern of treating my body as it needs to and resting as much as I should and staying in my own lane when it comes to health, because I used to follow a lot of health and fitness people and I unfollowed those for the beginning of my journey. And then I refollowed some of them because I did think they had good messages outside of health. But then it's like when I get stressed, I can feel myself semi-reverting back to old patterns. Not as bad as it used to be, of course, but like when I know I need the rest, not doing it. So instead of when I have a week that's stressful, instead of taking those couple days off, which I do, there are definitely weeks I don't work out. But when it's like I have that high energy going, when I have those weeks that are more stressful, sometimes when I know I should take those weeks off and just rest more, I'll end up working out at 6 a.m. And I'm like, well, where did that come from? And then my body at the end of the week, it hits me and my body tells me, all right, that was bad. Now we're going to go back to square one. And it's like, I'm still learning. That's a big thing with this process. I'm learning how my body responds to stress and what is actual stress. Because I wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm like ready to go and excited. My boyfriend thinks I'm insane because he is like the complete opposite, but that's just how I am. So it's kind of dangerous for me because I always have a lot of energy, but it's like, I have to force myself to sit back and be like, all right, Emily, let's look at this week that's ahead of us. Do we really think that if I work out 4 days a week, my body's going to like that or it's going to harm me? Let's really think about it. And if I don't step back and do that, and I'm not saying I work out 4 days a week every week, but this is just an example, then if I don't step back, then I will continue on my routine because I'm so routine oriented and it won't faze me. But now with this move and everything, and you talk about travel stress. Well, I travel all the time, so that's a lot of stress too every week. It's like I have to learn to be extra gracious with my body, and it's a lot more listening than I've ever had to do in my life. So I'm still learning so much. And I spoke with you about this before we really dove into this call, but this month, my period is late right now. I skipped February. I might still get it because I've had symptoms, but it's like I pretty much expected not to have it in February beforehand. I was like, all right, Emily, you have a lot of stress coming up, but I've had my period every month since September. There was one month in August where it was a little late, but ever since I started it in March after doing your program, I had it every month. Didn't have it in September, every month, didn't have it this month. And it was like, I prepared myself to, if I don't get it, don't freak out. It's okay. But I didn't cut back anything to make sure I got it, if that makes sense, because I was in that stress mode that I was like, all right, I'm stressed. Let's keep going in this routine and let's get it all done. And it's like, all right, no, let's take a step back. Let's get like 9 hours of sleep instead of 7.5. Like you're trying to, get by on 6 at times when you are really crazy. It's like, let's not do this. And it's a continuous learning process and constantly checking in with yourself.
Well, and I wonder if you're the kind of person that likes to have control.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you get into the situation where you're traveling and then you're moving and, you're moving to a new state that I don't think you'd ever lived in before. And there's so many changes happening. I wonder if it's almost this like reaction to all the change to say, well, what do I have control over? Let me like control my workout routine and just be super rigid with that. Do you feel like that's part of it?
Yeah, I definitely do. And it's like, I can't accept all the unknown. So I'm going to make sure I can do what I do know with the rigid exercising and the routines. So that's a learning process for me, that getting my period back in this program has really made me aware of it quickly whenever I have those weeks. And even this past month that I didn't have my period, I've only had 2 weeks that were stressful, that I knew that I worked out more than I should. And when I say I worked out more than I should, I only do yoga, Pilates, and I kind of been trying to incorporate some weights once a week. But it's like usually it's 1 day of yoga, 1 day Pilates, 1 day of weights. That's my normal routine. But it's when those stressful weeks came, I was like, well, I have some extra time. Let's do some more walking and let's do whatever. And it's like I didn't rest. And that's when this happened. It wasn't like I'm doing CrossFit again or doing anything crazy. But it's like even those little things that I added in were too much. And it's nice that now I know what it takes to, I know what I've been through in this journey, and I know how slow it was to even get to the point where I could exercise a couple of days a week. So I'm like, all right, it took 4 months to even exercise 2 days a week without feeling like you had no energy. Why do you really think exercising 4 days a week when you are traveling so much and have sales meetings all night is a good idea? Probably not. But now I have the awareness to, okay, let's not do that this next week or this next month, or let's check in more.
Yeah. And I also think maybe finding some other routines that you can start implementing to give you a little bit of that. Like control is such a weird word, because at the end of the day, like none of us are in control.
Yeah,
about anything,
exactly.
Even though we like to think we are. And there is value to routine for sure, especially if you are an ambitious person and there's a lot that you want to accomplish. Nobody's saying that you should just sleep in until 10 and, maybe show up for work and
Yeah.
So I just think maybe finding some routines that are not related to exercise to just help you feel like you're staying consistent with how you take care of yourself in general, and then letting the workouts be a little bit more flexible. And even if it's like, I'm going to do some kind of movement, but that movement this morning is just going to be some stretching and mobility work. Obviously that's a big difference than I'm going to go for a run or I'm going to go weightlift or something like that. So, cause like I said, I do think routine can be valuable. And even for me, being sick, like part of it's because I had to take cold medicine, and like I'm very sensitive to the nighttime versions of the cold medicine. So a lot of times I wake up very groggy, and it's like, and the last couple of days, I really did just let myself sleep because I didn't have any appointments early in the morning and I had worked all weekend. And so I was like, I'm just going to kind of give myself some, a slower morning. But I did find myself starting to just like feel like, I don't know how to explain it. Like the complete lack of movement and the lack of some of those other habits that I implement on a regular basis actually was leading me to feel worse. So I didn't go to the gym, especially because I think people would give me some serious stink eye if they saw me out in public right now with all of this stuff happening. But I was, I have a sauna at home and that was something I wasn't using. And I was like, let me add that back in because that'll help warm up like my body and make me feel a little less stiff. And then making sure I was getting my dog out on his walks and everything. And so obviously walking a dog and like doing a sauna is not the same thing as going to the gym and lifting weights or like running on the Peloton treadmill or something. But it did help me feel like I was easing back into my normal routine and making my body feel a little bit better, even though I am acknowledging that like, this is not my normal way of, operating. And this isn't normally how I feel. And, normally I don't sleep until 9:30 on a weekday, but it's just a situation where you have to be aware of what your body needs on an individual day-to-day basis and not let your routine become super rigid to the point where you can't actually listen. So I would love to hear from you because you've made so much progress. And even I do want you to give yourself some credit, even just the realizations you've had in the last couple of weeks, even if the behaviors maybe weren't optimal. I think just the fact that you're recognizing that is a huge improvement over where you were in the past. So definitely give yourself some credit there. Like it's, like you said, it's a process. And again, it's when you're someone who wants to be consistent with a routine and you have all this other stuff happening, it's like not surprising that the exercise piece would be difficult to be more flexible with. But I would love to hear from you what your life is like now after going through the program. And obviously you're still in it, like women who join get lifetime access. So Emily's still in there participating and asking questions and stuff when things come up. So, it's not like you're fully done and out, but you've made a ton of progress and you've implemented a lot from the program. So what are some of the biggest changes you've experienced in your physical, mental, and spiritual health?
Well, first, I got my period back, which of course was the outcome that I was most excited about. But with that, so much more happened. But basically, I started the program end of January and stopped exercising, started eating a lot more, got my period back by mid-March, which was amazing. And in that journey though, I realized that for so long, I remember even when I was little, I was always cold all the time. And my body temperature started stabilizing more. I wasn't always cold. I could actually go outside without a jacket and feel normal. So that was a huge plus for me. And another huge thing, I stopped binge eating completely. I had to add calories in, of course, to get my period back. But overall, I was eating pretty much enough calories on most days. I didn't count calories before I counted calories in college and then I stopped I was like, I'm never doing this again. That's been horrible for my mindset. And when I got back on the program, I started just to see if I was eating enough intuitively. And I was for most days, which was good. But I noticed before I started the program, I would still binge at times. And when I went through the program, I stopped binge eating completely, which was amazing. I don't at all anymore. And I'm really more intuitive and in tune with my body of what bothers me and what doesn't, just because of going through that period of like, in the program, I really made sure when I was eating, I was focused on eating and not doing 10 million things at once because it like made my digestion bad and everything like that from the stress. And I also started sleeping a lot better. And this had to do with a big part was not planning my exercises. That's something I used to do at night before bed as I would lay in bed and like look at my exercise program I was going to do in the morning. And I wasn't exercising, so I didn't have to do that. And I still don't do this. I sleep so well 90% of the time. Of course, there's that 10% of the time where like you're in a hotel and someone's being loud or whatever and you can't sleep, like last night for me. So I've been sleeping better. My skin actually now the past couple months has cleared up. I've never really had bad acne, but my face the past couple years hasn't been as clear as it used to be. And now it's more clear than ever. And it really took a while. And I really just have a lot more energy throughout the day. And of course, I know when to take a step back now, like I just was mentioning about exercising. Sure, my first instinct when I'm in stress mode is to do everything according to my schedule, because that's just how my mentality is. And I'm working on that, obviously. But it's like, now that I'm aware, I know when it's like, okay, let's not do that right now. And I am aware that I need to take a step back. So those are good things that I'm listening to my body and feeling those good physical benefits. But for mental, it's me. The biggest thing is noticing how sensitive my body is to stress, any type of stress, and realizing that I cause a lot of my stress, which is kind of interesting. So that's something that's I'm still, of course, working on that, but awareness is great. And movement, I've realized that I don't need movement to make myself happy, and that I can find my value in other things. And that I really just need to trust that what I'm doing is right, whether that be in this program, I obviously had to trust that this program was right for me. But now in general with life, it's like I need to trust that my path is what I need to do. Because one thing that I don't like about blogging and about podcasting, and I actually took a break from both for a whole month, and I just started podcasting again like 2 weeks ago, but not even blogging yet, is I don't like the social media piece, because I feel like I love sharing stories and hearing stories, but I don't like how when you go on to share something or look at someone positive that's sharing something, you get wrapped into everything else going on with so many other people's things in their life. And the big thing for me now is like trusting that whatever they're doing is fine for them and whatever I'm doing is right for me, and not letting what other people are doing affect what I'm doing in my life or what I think's best for me. And then spiritually, you obviously have a faith-based program, and I'm a Christian, and I really was big into my church before college, kind of lost touch with religion. I'm still a Christian. I still prayed and everything, but didn't go to church or anything in college. And now I'm really, when I was going through this program, I prayed every single day to get my period back. And I was like, please give me the strength, God, to get through this and really figure out who I am. And I know I have a lot of growing to do and all this. And it really was just remarkable that once you just trust that God has your back and he has a great plan for you, that you don't have anything to worry about. And even now, I moved here. I joined a great church here. I have a church group I go to once a week. And it's just amazing that the journey that I've gone through. And I don't know if I didn't go through this program of getting my period back, I would have been so rigid with everything else going on in my exercise and all that. So now it's like I add space for what I think is important.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that's something that pretty much in every program that I offer, like that's a huge goal that I have for all of my clients, is to really be able to minimize how much energy and attention and focus they're putting on their health, and maximize the attention and energy and focus they're putting on the things that really matter to them. And I love hearing that's what your experience has been, and that you're just giving yourself that space to not just take care of your body, because it is, there's a lot of energy and focus that goes into even learning how to pay attention to your body, but you're also not wrapped up in that as being the most important thing. You're making time and creating that opportunity to meet new people and build a community and just enjoy your new city and be able to connect with your spiritual practices and all of that. So that's really cool. And before I forget, because we talked about this before we started recording, I think it would be interesting to share. You had joined, I ran a beta version of a fat loss program that by the time this comes out, I don't know if it'll be available to the public yet or not, but I have a fat loss program that Emily joined at a beta level, which beta just means you're going through it as I'm creating it. So you get a discount and you get to like give feedback about the program. But you told me before we jumped on the recording, an interesting experience you had with that program. So you want to tell me a little bit about it, or tell the audience about it, because you did actually already tell me about it.
Yeah. So Laura, she emailed some people in the program already and was like, hey, I'm doing this beta program. If you're interested, then you get a discount. And I was like, oh, I've had my period for like however many months by then. It was consistent for like at least, I think, 6 months. And I was like, I have good energy, but I would like to lose some fat right now just because I feel like it would help me with my exercise, and which of course, right, even just saying that, if it's going to help me with my exercise, like that's not really the best reason to go into it. But I also, one big thing though, is I took a blood test in September. My triglycerides were high. So I was going into this spiraling as, oh my God, do I have too much weight? Is that making my triglycerides high? And all this stuff. And so basically I was like, all right, sure, I'll try it. And the amazing thing is, so of course you emailed us in January, and that was right when I started going back into my stress mode. Like I said, when I'm stressed, I fall back into old habits and I have to really pull myself out of it because I'm still working on that right now. And so I start like listening to the program, and you have a lot in the beginning of the program. It's a lot about mindset work, and it's similar to what we do with like what we've gone through with the amenorrhea program that get your period back, but it's kind of just figuring out, are you even ready for fat loss? Do you even need to lose fat? And of course, I gained fat from I gained a lot of weight in a short amount of time, and I didn't really do much exercising for a year. So naturally your body's going to gain some fat, but I still had a lot of muscle too. But I am strong. That's my affirmation for this year. And it's not just physical, it's mental too, because I feel like I have a lot of growth to do in various aspects of my life. And I was like, oh, this will really help me gain the strength I want and everything. And going through the beginning of your program, I was like, okay, I do not need to lose fat because of the checks you've had in there to see if you were even prepared. And I realized, no, I want to gain strength this year. I want to be able to go through my Pilates class and not take a break. I want to be able to be able to do cool things and have more mental strength to stick with commitments and more mental strength to not fall back to old habits and have this strength. I don't need to lose anything this year. I need to gain strength. So this right now is not what I need. But it was amazing the way you had it set up. And I'm not saying that it was bad that I did this beta program. It was great that I did this beta program because it made me realize it's like, Emily, everything you've been working towards, I don't need to lose fat. Like there's no reason for me. And I got my blood work tested. My triglycerides aren't even high. It was like, okay, so that relief was over. It's like that had nothing to do with it. So if you've gained fat and you're listening to this, don't think that your triglycerides are going to spike. I think it's because I did not eat well before. And it was just nice having that kind of like mindset shift of, okay, I need to do this because it's something new and it's something fun, to Emily, I don't actually need to do this. Let's stay in our lane and let's keep going down this path and keep using the tools you know to make sure your body's working optimally.
Well, when you asked me about joining, I was thinking, well, I know that the program's going to be very clear about whether or not she should be doing this or not. And I'm really glad that that was your experience because, had you gone to a different program, most programs don't cover that kind of stuff. And you might have just gone down into that rabbit hole of calorie counting or macro tracking or whatever kind of things that they would recommend.
Oh, it's interesting too, because in the beginning of that program, you're like, all right, well, let's speed up people who've been dieters in the past, you want to make your metabolism working again. And you kind of give some tips that you give with amenorrhea, like, let's get your metabolism working again, make sure you're eating enough. I'm like, you know what? I haven't tracked my calories in a while. Let's see if I'm eating enough. I'm like, nope. All right, let's go back. It wasn't that I was eating so little, but my body thrives when I'm eating, like hormonally, I thrive when I'm eating over, like, let's say 2,200 calories. Like when I dip down below, I might feel okay, but hormonally, that's where it's been thriving for the past year now. I was counting my calories in my fitness pal, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not even eating as much as I know I should be I use my Apple Watch to track how many calories I'm burning when I exercise so I can see how many calories I burn all day. So comparing to that, I was at a deficit at some days, which wasn't good because when you're stressed and you're at a deficit, not even being aware of it, that's when your hormones don't function properly, of course. So it was like that in the beginning, just revisiting that I already learned was just a great reminder of, all right, we need to keep checking in and we need to make sure things are working as they should.
Mm-hmm. And I really do think most people need to have that foundation of understanding of what their baseline nutritional needs are compared to how active they are, because I think just so many women are stuck in that mindset of eat less, move more, and, make sure you don't eat more than anyone else next to you and all of that kind of stuff that influences how much we eat. And even things like we were saying before we did the recording, when you're moving and you don't have a kitchen or you don't have any food in your fridge. It's not even necessarily on purpose. It's also sometimes you just get stressed out and you get distracted and busy. And I've definitely been there myself. And it's something that you really just have to be aware of. And it doesn't mean you have to panic about it. It just means you have to be mindful and make some purposeful changes and make sure you're getting enough food. And maybe that means you go out to eat because it's either that or have a, granola bar in your pantry. And it's better to eat out and get enough food than to not eat enough and to be going through day after day with that calorie deficit. So I'm glad you had that experience because, basically any program I create, I want people to understand the importance of adequate calorie and macronutrient intake and, whether they're trying to lose weight or not, it's got to be part of their understanding for the long term. Now, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed getting to chat with you, Emily. And I know that, we have little conversations here and there as part of the program, but it's been really cool to just get to learn more about what's going on with your life and how much has changed in the last year plus. And, one last question I have for you would be, what do you believe is your purpose for this season of life that you're currently in?
I think right now it's embracing what is and feeling grounded, because it's actually insane. I have not lived somewhere longer than 9 months in the past 6 years. So pretty much since starting college, I went to college, had an internship, moved all around for this job. And it's feeling grounded and embracing what I have right now. Because when you are in that physical mode of moving every second and going through all of these life changes, I was at Missouri and learning about product knowledge. Then I was in Tampa learning about field working. Then I was in Atlanta doing my actual job. Then I moved to Charlotte and I'm getting used to new customers. So it's all these changes with physical location and what I'm actually doing for work and all these changes in my life with getting my period back. It's I'm just going to embrace this is another reason too. It's this is the worst time. If I ever want to lose fat in the future, which I don't think, I don't even need to lose fat, but it's let's say, who knows, I might gain 30 pounds in the future. And if I ever needed to do anything like that, but it's right now is the last time that I need to do any changes like that, because I've already had so many changes that I want to just get used to what I have right now. And I just furnished my apartment, so not worrying about any of that stuff and just embrace and get involved in a community. So right now, what that looks like to me is I actually joined a church before even moving here because I was if I don't do some research now, in the beginning of January, I was a little bit more free, and then I had expos for work, and I knew once I moved, I would be traveling every week. So I did some research. I found a church it's called Elevation. It's a bunch of people know about Elevation churches. And I found a church group actually that they have that's on Mondays. I'm wow, that's great. I actually don't travel until Tuesdays most weeks. And I control my schedule. So it's if I put that in my schedule, I will do it. And just going to that was wow, this is amazing. And I I signed up for yoga teacher training, which kind of sounds crazy because of what we've been talking about. But the reason is because one of my bloggers I've followed since I was in high school, she actually lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is crazy now that I'm living here. And she's hosting a yoga teacher training program. And ever since I did yoga when I was 15 to heal my wounds, I wanted to be a yoga teacher. And so this right now is like me giving up all the other extra crap that I always try to do and focusing on being involved in my church, meeting new people, going to yoga, and not putting all this other nonsense in my schedule. And then from there, maybe next year opening space for other things. But right now it's just embracing what's going on in my life right now, and not trying to plan every second, and not trying to rush the process of getting used to this new city, or rush the process of, trying to be the best yoga person. No, I don't care about that. I just want to learn more and deepen my practice and be able to teach other people in a way that's helpful. And hopefully I want to teach, obviously, and I want to promote a message that you should exercise to enhance your life, not as a way to make exercise your life. And that's the message I want to bring across. But in this year or maybe longer, I'm like, you're not doing anything extra, Emily. You are just chilling and getting used to being bored and comfortable with the uncomfortable.
I love it. Well, I think the yoga teacher training sounds really exciting, and I know that you're going to make sure that you're getting the rest and the food that you need to fuel that. And I think it's really great to have people in the yoga world, especially, that can be a good influence for women eating enough and not worrying about how skinny they are, or not worrying about what they look like in yoga pants, and just being able to enjoy moving their body. So it's really cool that you're doing that. Now I have one more question that I feel like you're going to know what this question is, since you said you listen to the podcast. But that question is, what do you believe makes a person more than a body?
I believe what makes a person more than a body is really how they interact with the world and how they align with their values. So one thing I learned in this journey is that, because I want to make an impact on other people's lives, if you can't tell, I mean, with everything I've been trying to do, but it's like, before I can do that, I need to get aligned with my values and make sure that I'm living a life that's true to myself before I can really push upon, or not even push upon, but help other people with what they're setting with. And I think the way we do this is by really opening ourselves up to more possibilities, and really sitting with uncomfortable emotions, and then figuring out how we have our place in the world. Because there's so many people out there that are doing all these great things. And one thing that I kind of brought up in this podcast episode is staying in your lane. You can look at so many different people and see like, oh, I want to look like that person. I want to be that person, and all this physical stuff. But it's like, that's not your life, and you are meant to go down your special path. And one thing that I do struggle with is that I want to do too many things. So that's why this year is about sticking to my 2 things that I have on my list and not putting anything else on my plate. But it's like, it takes a lot to, when you're on social media and you're looking at all these people that are flashing all of this stuff about their appearance and everything, and even me going into this yoga world, it'll be so easy for me to go in there and feel. I actually just did assistant yoga teacher training a couple weeks ago to kind of prepare myself. And I went in there the first day and I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Before I even walked in there, maybe this isn't for me. And I was really bloated that day because I think it was a stress. It was a stress. I hadn't been bloated for like months before. So I woke up super bloated. I was like mad that my bloated belly was back, and I was struggling with that for so long and whatever. And I was upset going in there thinking about my body a little bit. And this is the first time I had this thought in so long, probably since before I started my period. And having that thought about my body, as soon as I went into this class, it dissolved. I was in there to help other people with assisting their practice, to deepen their practice, to help them do the best practice. And it was not about me. It was about helping them. But it was in the beginning, the way I got to that is we meditated, we thought about why we were there. And once you realize why you are where you're going and why you are on this earth, why you are doing what you're doing, once you have that, then you can go spread yourself to other people. And the images, the body image, the appearances, they just will shut off. And it takes a lot of work, but that's what it all comes down to, is really finding out who you are, what your values are, and how you can spread that to other people.
I love it. I would drop my mic, but it's on a boom, so it can't be dropped. But that was awesome. I love it. So, so I would love to share with the audience, since like you said, you have a podcast and a blog, and I'm sure that there's a lot of women feeling inspired by you right now that want to continue just hearing from you. And I feel like you kind of give this vibe of being someone's friend that they can kind of chat with and, be on the same journey together with, as opposed to being like a guru or something that's telling everybody what to do.
No.
So if people want to connect with you further, where can they find you?
Well, my blog is emilymorello.com. It's just Emily, Emily. Morello is Morello. And on there, I honestly haven't done much with my website, probably since December, but I'm thinking in April I'll update it once I'm not traveling every week and weekend. But on there, I have a link to my podcast, which is called the Honest Living Podcast. And I took a month off in January, but I've been back doing it. Every week, I talk about pretty much what I've been saying here is how can we live in line with our values and be the honest versions of ourselves. And I actually had Laura on it. She was one of my first guests, so that was awesome. I think it was episode 11-ish. I'll have to check back, but she's one of my first guests and it was an amazing episode. And my blog is called Life Hacks with Emmy Mo. And Emmy Mo is a nickname my friend that passed away, actually, that he gave me when we were in high school. So it was something that I was like, all right, I need to make it my blog title. And that's all on emilymorello.com. My Instagram is at Emily Morello. I honestly haven't done much with Instagram recently because I was taking a break, but I want to get back in and start documenting my yoga teacher training journey. And once I feel like the world isn't controlling my every second of my schedule and I have times to breathe, I am going to continue doing my usual. I usually get on and I talk about real experiences, about what's been going on with my life personally, how my amenorrhea journey has transpired. And actually, it's kind of interesting that we're recording this now. I think by then this podcast will already go out, but my 1-year anniversary will be in March, and I'm going to have a whole episode dedicated to that. And it will probably be interesting to a lot of you listeners who are struggling with that. And I'm going to give some tips on how I really embrace this journey and how I still am.
Awesome. Well, I think by the time this episode is live, that will have already passed. So I'm hoping that you'll have that episode, and we'll definitely link up to your website and your social media account so that people can get in touch with you and connect with you and just hear all of the awesome stuff you have to share on your podcast. So thank you so much, Emily. I know you're super busy, as we learned today. So I'm really glad that you had the time to come on the show and chat with me today about your experience in the program, as well as just what you've been doing outside of the program to continue your healing. And like I said, you've done so much work and have come so far in the last year plus. So definitely give yourself a lot of credit for all the work you've put in, and just know that everybody has stuff that they struggle with. And most of us, when we get stressed, have some bad habits or things that are maybe not the best choices for us that we fall back into. So,
self-destruction mode. That's what I call it.
Yeah. And it's not always something that's going to necessarily harm you, but there's good coping mechanisms and then there's not so good coping mechanisms, and we all have them. And so I think the most important thing is just that you're aware and you're paying attention and you're course correcting when things start to go off the rails a little bit. So I'm really glad to see that you're taking care of yourself and that you're doing well. And I just can't wait to see what else you accomplish with all of this new time and energy that you can put towards the things that matter.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And your program really is what lifted me up and helped me learn everything I did this year. So I really appreciate you, what you're doing, your message for women. I love your podcast. So I'm excited for this to come out. And I literally look forward to this podcast every single week on my drives wherever I'm going.
Oh, well, thank you. And if anyone else wants to get the weekly podcast, I do recommend subscribing on iTunes. It's the best way to get the updates. I also send emails out to my newsletter when we have new episodes every Monday. So I can't wait for this one to come out because I know it's going to make a big impact on the women that are listening, and just super grateful to have you on the show. Anyway, thank you to all of you who hung out with us today, and feel free to send me a message or send Emily a message, especially send Emily a message if you do like Instagram or anything. Just let her know how this affected you. I think it'll be nice for her to hear that she had an impact on you. So if this was a really helpful episode, just let Emily know, because it takes a lot of bravery to come on a show like this and to talk about your experience. So I know that she would appreciate knowing the impact that she's having. And feel free to let me know if you're enjoying the show and if there's anything that you want to hear about, because I'm always open to topic recommendations. All right, but thank you so much for spending the time with us today. We will see you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey, everyone. Laura Schoenfeld here again. Are you one of the nearly 45% of female athletes who experience menstrual irregularity? Have you gone more than 3 months in a row without a period? If so, keep listening because I have a special training just for you. As a women's health expert and functional medicine dietitian, I've successfully helped hundreds of women recover their periods quickly with my evidence-based holistic approach, whether they had hypothalamic amenorrhea, polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS, or post-birth control syndrome. Seeing these women recover their hormonal health, get their period back, and even get pregnant was truly a joy. And I knew I just had to get this information out to as many women as I could. And I can't wait to share this truly life-changing information with you too. That's why I'm excited to share with you my free online video training, How to Get a Regular Period Without Birth Control. On this free training, you'll learn why any woman who wants to get her period back and get pregnant should not take the birth control pill. The single most important thing women must know about following the right diet if they want to get their period back and prepare for a healthy pregnancy. Why quitting exercise isn't necessary for period recovery, but you do have to have the right approach to working out. Why chasing weight gain or even weight loss is a total waste of time when trying to recover a normal menstrual cycle. You'll also learn 5 common myths preventing so many women from getting their period back so they can get pregnant naturally. And even their doctors are confused about these 5 myths. I'll also show you how to save time and money on your journey to becoming a mom and starting a family. And finally, you'll learn my proven 4-step protocol has helped dozens of women get their periods back so they can get pregnant fast and without using risky medications. So if you want to get your period back quickly without resorting to birth control, quitting exercise, or giving up the healthy lifestyle that you love, then this free online workshop is for you. To get instant access to the free training, go to getyourperiodback.com. You'll learn everything you need to know about recovering a regular, healthy period without giving up the healthy foods and exercise that you love. Check it out at getyourperiodback.com, and I'll see you on the training.